Hi, in this video lecture, we're going to continue our discussion of Full Metal Jacket. So we're going to look at the second part of the film, and we're going to discuss Cowboy's leadership and his death. So we'll get into the sniper scene. Before that, I just do want to cover that one scene where all the men, the whole Lust Hog squad, is negotiating on the price of a prostitute. So we'll look at that scene as well as an example that demonstrates military masculinity and some of that power, privilege, and bigotry that is characteristic of the military masculinity represented in the film. Okay, so that's this lecture topic. Okay. Let's get started. So you can really see the kind of homosocial dynamic between the men, the soldiers, when they are sort of together in front of that abandoned movie theater, and there is a pimp, a Vietnamese man, who brings a prostitute and starts to negotiate with the men on a price for this woman's service. So we get an example or a sort of representation of how privilege and power is negotiated between men, between the Lust Hog squad themselves, and between the men and the Vietnamese pimp who is in charge of this young woman's work as a prostitute. So the female individual in this scene again points out the sexual exploitation that is taking place in Vietnam, the degradation of Vietnamese women in particular, how they are viewed by the American soldiers as kind of just a discardable, degraded object, the object of ridicule, and a sexual object that they sort of just use and treat, not like nothing more than, an object or something, discardable. So we have an example. So that would sort of tell us one thing about military masculinity, is how they exploit women, degrade women, and view them as merely sexual objects, especially the Vietnamese women who are present in the film. And we also get examples, so we have examples of sexism in this exchange of the prostitute, and the men are kind of negotiating with this male pimp for the woman, and then they think she's charging, or they're charging too much at $15. So they negotiate for less, and they end up exchanging rifles for time spent with this woman. And that is interesting in itself, where we see like the rifle and women being sort of on an equal level of exchange, both objects. And we've seen the rifles being feminized in earlier part one of the film, where the rifle is given a female name. So in this case, we have objects, two kind of objects being exchanged between men, both sort of markers of status and point out male privilege within this social order. So if you have a rifle, if you have the woman, you're kind of boosting your reputation as a man as well. So we see the men also kind of jockeying for position, who gets to go first when they spend time with this woman. And that's also kind of how the homosocial male bonds kind of are negotiated. And we see that hierarchy, that not all men access power and privilege equally within a kind of patriarchal social order. So we have 8 Ball, an African-American man, So he puts himself as the first man who wants to have, sexual relationship with this woman. And there is this exchange where, she rejects him because of his, this kind of myth or stereotype of African American, the genital endowment. That's, an old kind of myth or stereotype of, male phallic prowess, we'll say, euphemistically. So the size of penis. And anyway, we get this sort of confrontation between the woman and 8-Ball, and he has to sort of prove that he is, not as well endowed as that myth or stereotype is not true. So he, has to expose himself in order to gain access to this woman. So in that way, it's kind of confronting, racial stereotypes. And as an African American male, 8-Ball doesn't have sort of the same position. In a way he does, and in a way he doesn't. So he's part of this brotherhood in the Marine Corps. But even in this scene, we see how his sort of status as an African American man, and this is 1968, so it's sort of a time when racial relationships were still problematic and fraught with tension and racism. We're still very much a part of sort of the culture of America and other parts of the world. And then it's Animal Mother, the kind of white hegemonic alpha male of this group, who pushes aside 8-Ball and actually refers to him in very sort of derogatory racial slurs, uses the N-word, and he places himself first in this negotiation with who gets the access this woman first. So it sort of speaks to a kind of racial hierarchy within this male bonding unit. So alpha male, animal mother, the white man, and leader, well, somewhat leader, alpha male, most dominant, aggressive member of Lust Hog Squad, sort of asserts his dominance in this scene. And he seems to be, of all the men, the most sort of overtly racist, most overtly sexist. The way he talks to the woman, and they all refer to her as meat. So it's again sort of reiterating this idea that to these men, this woman is nothing. She's not even human. She's flesh. It's very kind of viewing her as a subhuman, not even worth considering as a person. So there is that as well. And we see Animal Mother really sort of his true nature as violent, aggressive, bigoted, sexist, all these really, horrible characteristics sort of are sort of asserted in this scene. And he is sort of the dominant one of this group as well. So he is at the top of that pyramid, that patriarchal social order. He is the hegemonic male and the one who sort of wields a lot of the authority. Even though he's not the troop leader, right? He's not the platoon leader at this time. He still seems to assert his dominance, especially over 8-Ball. So I think there is some commentary on race and the unequal access to power and privilege, even among men, given their any sort of sense of difference or racial distinction. So that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about in that scene. So you have the objectification of women, the degradation of women, and their sort of commodification and the association with objects like a rifle. the unequal power and privilege among the men themselves, as evidence in the racist comments towards 8-Ball, and Animal Mother as this kind of hegemonic male, alpha male, very sort of sexist and bigoted character. Okay, so the next scene I want to talk about occurs after Crazy Earl is shot and Cowboy is put in charge of the platoon. So Cowboy, who Joker is friends with from part 1, he becomes the platoon leader. And it seems as if, you know, the ideal of being a platoon leader versus the reality of being a platoon leader, there's some disjoint or you know, disjointment between these two things. So Cowboy is in a leadership position, but it seems as if almost at every decision he either makes a mistake or his authority is questioned. And it's not all kind of what he maybe dreamed of when he was a young man, you know, wanting to be a leader, a Marine. So the reality of his leadership does not meet the expectations or the ideal of being a military authority. So that's very evident when Cowboy gets the whole platoon lost and put into a dangerous situation. So almost immediately his authority, his leadership is questioned. And the fact that he gets them lost in the first place suggests that, you know, he is a human after all, right? You know, he makes mistakes. He has certain weaknesses and vulnerabilities. And, you know, there is just some measure of fallibility or they can make mistakes. It doesn't matter who you are or whether you're in charge. So it sort of speaks to a kind of realistic sense of masculinity sort of failing under pressure. And in this situation, Cowboy sort of falters in his leadership, and he is sort of questioned by the other men as well. So his leadership is on shaky ground, and the men start to sort of almost mutiny against his order. He often tells them to, you know, cease fire, lay back, and retreat. But once one and then a second man is shot, he loses control of his platoon. So the first man who is shot is 8-Ball. I'm curious if there's any significance to this, the fact that 8-Ball is the first one who is shot, that he's sent over first in dangerous territory, unknown territory, and is placed in that most vulnerable position. So I'm curious to know, you know, I wonder if that is a significant detail, you know, as maybe the African American male in the platoon, he is, you know, seen as more expendable than the other men, or is it just his role? So it's something that I question when I watch the film. You know, why is his character the one who is sort of almost sacrificed in that scene, the first to die, the first to go into dangerous territory? Is he viewed as more expendable amongst the whole platoon? So that's something that I considered when I was watching. I don't know the answer to that, but you know, it's possible you could read it that way. So Cowboy loses 8-Ball. He's shot 3 times. The men then don't know whether to go and try to get him back. They don't know how many snipers or what's waiting behind the building. Cowboy thinks it's going to be an ambush. But Animal Mother thinks it's just a sniper, and Animal Mother is correct. It's just one single sniper, and he discovers that when another man goes over trying to rescue 8-Ball, bring him back, because the strength of this platoon, this brotherhood, is that you don't really abandon one man or one of your fellow brother soldiers and let them die that way. So